Hi, this is Kogito, and I'm back with another Through the Ages video. So in the last video, we covered the last 3-player game in the second round of my World Championship group, and as a result of that game, I am now guaranteed to finish first in the group. That said, there is still some reason to care about the last 2-player games I will be playing. First of all, through most of those games, it wasn't absolutely clear that I would finish first. There was still something to play for. Second of all, there's the Glico consideration, but there's a third reason. Now, in the first 4-player game of this group, Bull 3 actually timed out, which is why I didn't cover that game in my videos. Now, who knows what would have happened if Bull 3 hadn't timed out and I'd played that game through to the end, but it is possible that if Bull 3 had played that game instead of the AI, then perhaps I would have finished last and Bull 3 would have finished first. Maybe that's unlikely, but it was possible. And so, because of that, if I finished the group more than 12 points, that was a 12-point swing, right? Because I got 6 points and Bull 3 got 0 points. So if I finished the group 12 points ahead of Bull 3, that will prove, essentially, that the timeout didn't matter and I would have won the group regardless. So, you know, I cared about that at least a little bit. So in this video, we're going to see my 2-player game against Bull 3. And without further ado, let's take a look. I'm playing second in this game, and we can take a quick look at the leaders and wonders. It's a 2-player game, so we want to look at whether there's Bach and Shakespeare first, and we can see that neither of them are actually in this game. There is Gotti as a culture leader, James Cook, kind of, especially with Suez Canal, but still Bach and Shakespeare are the major ones. So the lack of both of them in this game means that going super hard on culture early, while still potentially good, is not as good as it normally is in a 2-player game. So maybe some more focus on the economy might be helpful. Printing presses perhaps not as good as they could be. Now, there are, however, a bunch of culture leaders in Age 3. In particular, there's Marlena, Fleming, and Hollywood. So even though there's not much culture synergy in Age 2, there's a lot in Age 3. So we definitely want to at least set ourselves up for a strong theater play in Age 3. There is also Spaceflight plus Marie Curie or Sid Meier plus Internet. So there are some non-theater synergies too, but I think especially in a 2-player game, the theater leaders with Hollywood are what you really want to aim for. Now, Bull 3 takes Confucius. I think that is the best card. I mean, Colossus maybe can be considered with the Suez Canal, but I do think, especially since there's also Hammurabi on the road, but then again, Hammurabi, if you're going for Colossus for colonies, Hammurabi has bad synergy because you have less chance to draw colonies, so I think Confucius makes sense. Strong leader. Now, I had kind of a more interesting decision to make. I think that, in my case, the choice was mainly between this Colossus, which you'll see is what I ended up taking, or perhaps Boudica. Now, Boudica is certainly a strong leader, perhaps not as strong as Hammurabi, although again, if I'm going Colossus, I won't be going Hammurabi anyway. So Boudica could certainly be worth taking with Confucius. And since Colossus would have been discarded, there was no real risk of me having to use the military resources on my first few turns. That said, there were a couple reasons for me to want to take Colossus as well. Like I said, there is the Suez Canal in this game. Now, there are other strong H2 leaders, but I also think there's the James Cook. And I think in this game, the strongest potential synergy is definitely James Cook plus Suez Canal. So I wanted to potentially leave myself open for that. Colossus is definitely strong for that. There's also the consideration that Colossus is the only AJ Wonder on the row right now. Now, it is probable that at least one of these will show up, and since they show up on the 3 civil action row, probably Bull 3 won't take them, and maybe I could take them for 2 civil actions, but I still won't know necessarily. I mean, Stonehenge and Library could both be good, but maybe just the Hanging Gardens will show up. Now, if I took Boudica, she could give me extra science, so maybe I could potentially wait for an Age 1 wonder. There aren't the best Age 1 wonders available. I mean, Silk Road would be good as your first wonder. Great Wall could be good. Less good than a 2-player game, I think. Himeji Castle could be good. In a 2-player game, culture might matter. So, going without the AJ Wonder could perhaps be fine, but I thought that I felt more comfortable guaranteeing myself a good AJ Wonder, and I definitely think Colossus is a strong wonder in this James Cook Suez Canal game. In addition, it's also important to note that Boudica will not be discarded, so even without taking Boudica, because Bull 3 already took their leader, I am guaranteed Boudica next turn anyway if I wanted her. And taking the Colossus for 1 civil action also means that I get the Urban Growth. So, especially since... Okay, well, taking the Urban Growth means that Boudica will be discarded, so those are the other major consideration to taking Colossus, because I could have taken the Patriotism instead, and that would have guaranteed me having Boudica next turn for 1 civil action. And that was definitely a strong consideration. I think Boudica plus Colossus would be a strong combination in a 2-player game with Suez Canal. However, there is also this Sun Tzu on the row who I was eyeing. Now, there's no Yanziska in this game, so Sun Tzu isn't as strong as he can be. But I do think in a Suez Canal game, especially if you have the Colossus, Sun Tzu can still be very strong. So I thought that, especially since taking the, if I'm aiming for Sun Tzu, I can take this Urban Growth instead of the Patriotism, which is a significantly worse AJ yellow card. So essentially the question is, what would you rather have? Maybe take Boudica to give myself more civil actions next turn, not as important turn 2. I think probably the main questions were, do you want Colossus plus Patriotism, thus aiming for Boudica as your leader, or do I want this Urban Growth, thus aiming for Sun Tzu as my leader? And I think it is a close decision. Maybe taking the Patriotism to get Boudica would be better, because Sun Tzu might be available for 1 civil action for me next turn. It depends on which yellow card Bowl 3 takes, because Bowl 3 will probably elect Confucius, build a mine, increase the population, then they have 1 civil action left. They could maybe, so that if they take the rich land of the cultural heritage, then Sun Tzu will be available for 2 civil actions, but they might want the frugality instead. They've already built the mine, so the rich land they might not be able to use it before the age is over. They might prefer the frugality to the cultural heritage. So there is a chance, at least, that Sun Tzu will be available for 1 civil action. So I think the question is more, do you value Sun Tzu or Boudica more? And while I think Boudica is the stronger leader in general, and maybe even in this situation she's slightly stronger, being able to take the Urban Growth. If I took Boudica, I would have the Patriotism instead of the Urban Growth. So taking the Urban Growth, leaving with Sun Tzu, who does have extremely strong synergy with Colossus, I felt that was slightly better, but I think it is really close. A lot to talk about on that first turn. Okay, we'll see all the H3 winners are revealed. Anyway, Bowl 3 does do the 3 major things, and we can see Bowl 3 does take the frugality. I think they definitely should have at least highly considered one of these, because now Sun Tzu will be available for 1 civil action. Maybe they were expecting me to take Hippocrates or Hammurabi anyway. I think Hammurabi pairs really awfully with the Colossus, even though he is normally a very strong leader. So I might have considered Hippocrates, but maybe I still would have taken Sun Tzu for 2. Regardless, though, I do understand valuing the frugality over those 2 A yellow cards in their situation, but I was glad to take Sun Tzu for 1 civil action. I did have a choice whether I wanted, with my Urban Growth, did I want to build a lab first turn or my mine first turn, and I ended up deciding on the lab because, well, I didn't take the Rich land, but I ended up on the lab because I felt that since Sun Tzu doesn't give science, I thought that the science would be more valuable than the resources for me. 2 turns from now I'll have 3 resources and not that much to do with them anyway. Turn after that, I'll have 6, which is enough to finish the Colossus, so I just felt that the science would probably be more valuable than the resource, since Sun Tzu doesn't give science. I draw 4 cards, 2 colonization cards, which I was definitely happy to see. Unfortunately, nothing to seed, which I didn't like. Bowl 3 does seed with Confucius, reveals the development of warfare. Take Saladin for 2 civil actions. One option for me was taking Saladin and skipping Sun Tzu, but I didn't feel that was worth it because, like I said, I was setting up for a colonization game. I think Sun Tzu can be strong for me. It would force me to... So I thought that even though Saladin is a very strong leader in 2-player games, I didn't want to take him for 3. Maybe it was worth considering, though. He definitely would have been good, but I think there are also other strong leaders, especially maybe Christopher Columbus. I'm going to draw a lot of cards, so the chances of getting a colony with him was high, and that would be good to the Suez Canal, so maybe it wasn't worth it. Definitely, I do agree with taking him for 2, though. But they also takes the Library of Alexandria. I personally prefer Stonehenge, but this is a strong winter too, so I understand. Builds 1 stage, so because Bowl 3 took Saladin for 2 civil actions and the Library for 1, that doesn't leave him with enough civil actions to get his first lab, unfortunately. But they will be able to finish the Library next turn, getting the science income anyway, so I think that's fine. I don't have any quests to seed. I do, however, want this iron. So another reason to build the lab before the mine with the Urban Growth is it means 2 turns later you have 5 science, which would be enough for a super early iron, which I was glad to see become available for me. Now, it does mean, however, I will be passing up on this Code of Laws. And since both three also took Saladin, now there are a few ways to look at it. Since both three already took Saladin, Code of Laws may be a bit less valuable to them than it normally is, though it'll still be good for them, obviously. So it definitely... This also could have been a very strong card to take. It's also available for one less civil action. I was a little worried about would I have enough science to play it, because I'm not getting any extra science from my Leader of Wonder, and none of the H1 leaders, well, maybe Leonardo da Vinci, but I don't know if I'll be going on alchemy, so... There's also, I think the main reason I wanted the iron was because, like I said, I would be able to play it next turn. Now, playing it this way does mean that if I took the Code of Laws, I would have civil actions to increase my population and build a mine. Well, no, actually I couldn't, because I took... Right, so, because I took this, the development of warfare, you know, I wanted it, I think it's always good to have, but that means that if I increase my population, it would be unhappy. So by taking the development of warfare, I can't build another mine anyway. So the fact that this costs one less civil action is less important, because I can't build a mine anyway. And so the fact that I can play the iron next turn, and potentially, maybe either build a mine directly, that would require some things to happen, because I would need to pop twice and have 5 resources to build the mine directly, so that would require, like, specifically development of trade routes, or, like, 2 resource developments, so it's probably unlikely that I'll be able to build a mine directly next turn, but I will at least potentially be able to play at and upgrade 1 mine, which... Because I took this development of warfare, means that if I don't take this iron, there's a chance that I won't be able to build my 3rd mine next turn either, which would significantly set back my resource income, which I didn't want. So the iron at least gives me a way to increase my resource income without needing an extra population, which since I took the development of warfare, I thought was important in this situation. And I wasn't sure if I would have the spare science necessarily to play the Code of Laws. I wouldn't be able to play it next turn unless help with developments, which I can for sure play the iron next turn. So for all those reasons, I valued the iron over the Code of Laws, even though this does leave both three with the Code of Laws for one civil action when they have Confucius, so that, and the Library of Alexandria, so that part of this play is definitely questionable, and I think taking the Code of Laws, plus maybe, I don't know, I don't really want to increase my population this turn, because that would put me in consumption, so that's another consideration. Like, what else would I take with it? Maybe the Knights. I think Code of Laws plus Knights was definitely a play I seriously considered. But in the end, I thought that, like I said, because I haven't built my 3rd mine yet, I might not be able to build it next turn anyway. The iron felt slightly better for me in this situation. I wanted to guarantee I could start my iron upgrades next turn. And with my 4th civil action, I could potentially take the urban growth or the cartography, although I probably won't have the science for cartography, even though I'm planning on going colonization. I'll have the colonization bonus anyway. So instead, I wanted to guarantee myself this happy face solution. I don't have a happy face solution for my wonder. The Great Wall is the only happy face wonder in H1, and it only gives 1, so I'm definitely going to need a happy face solution before the end of H1. If I don't take the bread and circuses, it would have to be the theology, which I don't know if I would get, especially since both 3 is on Saladin, and maybe Code of Laws is going to have more than enough civil actions to deny me cards. So I thought it was important for me to guarantee myself having this happy face solution in my hand. It maybe won't be great because I don't know if there'll be development of religion, but on the other hand, I might not, you know, I might not get the development of religion anyway. It might come out, it might not be in the deck, so I thought that it was important for me to make sure I had this in my hand. And I discarded, you know, I briefly considered keeping the heavy cavalry tactic, but since I got that 2nd infantry, maybe another consideration was not taking the development of warfare and trying to go into heavy cavalry, but I think I don't really have any particular help with food or happy faces, so I think the chances of me getting heavy cavalry going were low regardless. And I draw a territory which I was definitely happy to see because I want colonization, 2 aggressions, and a knowledge of the ancients. Both 3 seeds reveals the development of religion, so on the one hand, I'm missing out, but on the other hand, so is both 3, and I got the bread and circuses, so I was fine seeing this development. Both 3 play Saladin, does take the Code of Laws for 1 civil action, and play it, so definitely, like I said, leaving this 1 civil action for both 3, not the best. On the other hand, both 3 now is having some severe science issues and won't be able to play any other technology anytime soon, so there's a trade-off there. But I do think this is a strong play from both 3, and they spend their last civil actions finishing the Library of Alexandria, so they at least have 2 science income, and taking their urban growth. That does mean the knights get discarded there, notably. Both 3 passed up on military technologies to do that. Now, on my turn, I wanted to see the colony. I could potentially consider keeping it in case of Columbus, but since I'm drawing a bunch of cards, there's a good chance I'll draw a second colony anyway. I might not even want Columbus. Maybe I'll take Isabella or Barbarossa or something. So I thought that it was more important for me to put that colony into the deck. So, especially since I have these 2 colonization cards and Colossus, I want to maximize the number of colonies in the deck. The development type I reveal is the development of markets, which I was definitely glad to see because with those 2 resources, I am able to upgrade 2 of my mines to iron without needing to put an extra population that I don't have into it. So being able to do this definitely made me feel better about the iron play. Though, like I said, giving both 3 could have lost 1 civil action. I think it's a close call, maybe. Anyway, I have 1 civil action left, and I have a few choices of what to do with it. I think there are some important cards in the row. Theocracy I didn't really consider. I don't have a way to get a 5th civil action with it. Swordsman and Drama, potentially, because it is a 2-player game, but there isn't really... I mean, there's Gotti, but there's no Bach. There's Malena, but still without Bach, I felt that Drama wasn't an important card to take, wasn't worth taking here, especially since I have the Bread and Circuses already. So I think this decision really comes down to, do I want the Swordsman or the Alchemy? And I think that there is a case to be made for both of them, but I end up taking the Swordsman. There are a few considerations against taking the Alchemy. First of all, I won't have the science to play... I mean, I won't have the science to play Swordsman anyway, but the event deck is going to be flipped soon. So I think I'm going to be wanting to play a military technology pretty soon regardless, because soon we're going to have some events happening. So if I played the Alchemy, then maybe I would potentially have enough science to play the Swordsman next turn, but that's still a turn later. But another reason not to take the Alchemy is I have these Iron Mines going anyway. In a 2-player game, there are 2 copies of Scientific Method, so you're guaranteed to get 1 of them as long as you target it, as opposed to 1 copy of Colon Selective Breeding. So I think in a 2-player game, it's definitely preferable to pass up the Alchemy than it is to pass up the Iron. I have the Iron Mines going already, so I think in my situation, especially since if I get the Alchemy, I would have to wait at least until the 2 turns from now to play it, maybe even 3 turns from now or later if I prioritize the military 2 turns from now, then it would be maybe 4 turns from now until I get the Alchemy. I mean, there is the Knowledge of the Ancients in my hand, but since I seeded the colony, I'll probably discard it. So I just felt it would probably be too long until I get the Alchemy going anyway. I don't really need to get it going because I've already have Iron Mines going, so I already have like the 1 economic upgrade. You want to have 1 economic upgrade in Age 1 at least, and I already have that going. So I felt the Alchemy wasn't really important to me. I could afford to wait for Scientific Methods. With the Swordsman is potentially extremely important to me. I don't have a tactic yet. I discarded the Heavy Cavalry. And 1 copy of Knights has been discarded. In addition, both 3 has Saladin and Code of Laws. They have 6 civil actions going. So there's a good chance that both 3 will get the 2nd copy of Knights, meaning that if I want a military technology, it might have to be this copy of Swordsman, and I might need Swordsman anyway because the tactic I draw might be an infantry tactic. So I do think in this situation the Swordsman is more important than the Alchemy. I discard everything except my colonization cards, and I do draw a cavalry tactic, so maybe the Swordsman won't end up being useful after all, but it was an important card to take just for safety reasons. I draw another colony and a good harvest, and another colonization card. Both 3 increases the population with Frugality 2 times, finally builds the 2nd lab, now they have 3 science protection going, and takes the Alchemy for potentially even more science, and the breakthrough chooses to pass up Isabella, well, okay, they have it, Saladin, never mind. So, yeah, I think this turn definitely makes sense. Breakthrough for 2 civil actions is a fine card, one of those powerful Age 1 yellow cards, so I have no real observations about that turn. Like I said, especially since I have all these colonization cards, I definitely want to get that 2nd colony into the deck. Even though, maybe, at this point, there's a chance that Columbus won't be available until the end of the age anyway, so I probably am gonna want one of these other leaders. We'll see what I end up doing, but, yeah, I want, like I said, as many colonies in the deck as possible. I get the development of crafts. With the development of crafts, that is enough to finish the classes, but first I do choose Isabella. I think that Isabella is a fine leader. She's not the most exciting Age 1 leader, but she is at least consistent because she always gives this bonus. And I think in my situation, because I know that 2 of these are colonies, and that I'm going for a colonization game with the Suez Canal, I think she is definitely better than normal. there's also the consideration that Leonardo isn't going to be good for me. I passed up Alchemies. Barbarossa, maybe. I think he was the other leader I was considering, but I thought that Isabella was more consistent for me, because in case like I don't get the irrigations going soon or something like that. And like I said, I was mainly aiming for colonization. I also, oh yeah, there's another important reason. Well, we'll see what I end up doing, but yeah, there's another important reason to take Isabella, which I think we'll see. Now, one downside of electing Isabella this turn is it means that I won't be able to upgrade any tactic with Sun Tzu, because the only two I draw were the heavy cavalry and this medieval army. I didn't want to play the medieval army and upgrade it, because like I said, I thought there was a good chance Bull 3 was going to get the second copy of Knights, so I didn't want to leave a upgraded cavalry tactic for Bull 3 to copy, so I decided to just not use that function of Sun Tzu. And instead, I did want to directly elect Isabella, because as we can see... Okay, right, so after that, I now had to choose, do I want to finish the Colossus, or do I want to do this and build my third Iron Mine? And I think there's a case to be made for both. Certainly, the event deck has now been flipped. If I build the Colossus, I will be the strongest in Bull 3's turn, and I'll have a colonization bonus for the colonies. On the other hand, I have all these colonization cards in my hand, so I probably won't need the colonization bonus, but it's definitely nice to have. On the other hand, building the Iron Mine this turn gives me 2 extra resource income, right? So, okay, I guess I didn't need to elect Isabella this turn, so I could have potentially waited to get 2 more card draws. Maybe I should have, in retrospect, because, well, Isabella is providing me this 1 resource, but I'm still going to have enough resources to finish the Colossus next turn regardless. Isabella's blue cubes aren't helping me this turn, so maybe the 2 extra military card draws from Sun Tzu would have actually been more valuable than the 1 extra resource. Although, it is also true that by playing Isabella this turn, if a colony is revealed, I'll be able to use her ability to get a colonization bonus, so it's a trade-off. I can see the justification for playing Isabella this turn. Regardless, though, like I said, the choice between finishing the Colossus and building my third Iron Mine is a choice between, do I value those 2 extra resources more, or do I value being strongest in Bull 3's turn more? And I decided, like I said, I know for a fact that 2 of these are colonies, for which being the strongest doesn't matter. I don't know if either of the other 2 are strength events. Bull 3 hasn't exactly been hyper-focused on strength. I mean, they've had other things to do, but that's perhaps an indication that Bull 3 hasn't seeded strength events, because they haven't really been trying super hard to up their strength. So, for those reasons, I thought the chances of there being a strength event being revealed by my next turn, maybe not that likely, and by electing Isabella this turn, I'll have colonization bonuses anyway with my resources, so I decided that I valued, basically, if you think about it, the 2 extra resources I get for building it this turn with Isabella gives me an extra 2 colonization bonus, right, with her ability, so that's actually better than the Colossus anyway. So I do think that building the third Iron Mine first is better than finishing the Colossus first. I mean, I could maybe finish the Colossus to be able to take a Wonder next turn, but, I mean, the Great Wall, maybe I'd want to take, but the chances are low that it'll be available, like, in this part of the card row anyway, so Himeji Castle, maybe, but even if I do want an Age 1 Wonder, I want my resource production going earlier regardless, so. Another reason to do it this way is because I need to spend 3 civil actions to increase my population twice and use the Happy Worker to build an Iron Mine, whereas finishing the Colossus only costs 2 civil actions. So I finished the Colossus this turn. I mean, I could also increase my population this turn, so that's maybe actually not really a consideration. So it really is between do I want the resources early, and I did value the extra 2 resources more. I discard everything except 2 of my colonization cards, draw Call to Arms and Arena of Terror. Bull 3 upgrades 2 alchemies, increases the population, takes another breakthrough, and the last copy of Swordsman. That is a sensible turn from them, but it does mean that I'm going to be strongest on my turn, which is perhaps also an indication there are strength events in the deck. I do decide to seed. I decided against seeding the Call to Arms because Bull 3 has so many civil actions and only 2 military actions. Losing the Call to Arms might actually be good for them, arguably. So whereas the Reign of Terror obviously is always going to be bad for them, I was pretty confident I'll be able to be stronger than both three because I have the Colossus and all this resource income. So I was confident I would be able to win the Reign of Terror. I reveal one of both threes seeds the cultural influence. Now, I definitely do want to finish the Colossus this turn, making me strongest on both threes turn and getting this one colonization bonus going. I don't really have anything better to do. I mean, maybe getting irrigations going, but I definitely think finishing the Colossus is more important. That gives me 2 extra civil actions. There are a few things I can do with them, but one thing they definitely want is to take the irrigation. Again, in a 2-player game, there's only 1 copy of selective breeding, so you always want to take an irrigation if you can, and I don't have anything much more critical to do this turn. I'm stronger than both three. I don't need to upgrade my warriors to swordsmen yet, so I definitely have the free civil action to take this irrigation as a safety measure, which leaves me with 1 civil action left. So I think the major options are, you know, I could take one of these cards, or, which I do end up taking the Frugality. I could have maybe played the Bread and Circuses, because I want to play it eventually anyway. That being said, that if I played the Bread and Circuses, I wouldn't have enough science the following turn to play the Swordsman, so that's probably not a good idea. And the Frugality I've added of the Patriotism, I mean, both three got all of the civil action cards in Age 1, so I'm going to be playing on 4 civil actions for the foreseeable future, so I definitely need to be careful about how many civil actions I use. So Patriotism requiring a civil action to play, I felt wasn't good. Also, I have a lot of resource income anyway. The Frugality, I thought, could potentially be a good card, especially if I go into irrigations. You know, when you go into irrigations, sometimes you run into food issues, so you want as much food as you can get. And Frugality could definitely be good, especially since, again, I'm going to be... I know I'm going to want extra population for the strength event I just seeded. I'll probably seed more strength events in the future if I draw them. So extra food definitely will be helpful for me in my situation. And like I said, I didn't want to play any of these technologies preemptively because I don't know which one I might want to play first. So I preferred the yellow card. Discarded the Call to Arms, and drew another colonization card, and finally a tactic. It's the worst tactic, but it's a tactic at least. Both three does take the Iron for 1 civil action, and is able to upgrade 2 mines, plays their own Fighting Band tactic, and takes the 2nd copy of Irrigation and a copy of Reserves. Definitely have enough civil actions for the Reserves. Chooses to not take the Printing Press, but as discussed earlier, printing presses aren't great in this game anyway. Now it's my turn. I can't seed, but I do definitely want this Great Wall. I certainly have enough resource income to afford an Age 1 wonder, and I think the Great Wall is going to be much more powerful than the Himeji Castle. Well, I don't even know if both three may very well take the Himeji Castle on their turn. They definitely have enough civil actions for it. But I think the Great Wall is better for me anyway. I'm obviously going to be going into infantry in this game with my swordsman and fighting band. And the Happy Face could also definitely be helpful for me because I might be able to delay the Bread and Circuses, or even when I play it, you know, being able to go into this part of the Yellow Bank would definitely be useful, especially if we get the irrigations going. So overall, I just thought that the Great Wall was a very strong wonder for me, and I definitely wanted it. So the question is what to do with my remaining 2 civil actions to get out of corruption as well. And I decided to get my farm upgrades going. I could maybe wait on them and hope to get the selective breeding, but both three has 2 more civil actions than me, so I thought chances were any singleton Age 2 cards, both three has a much higher chance than me of grabbing them. So I thought that there was a good chance that I wouldn't get the selective breeding regardless. And so given that, I wanted to get my farm upgrades going earlier. This still leaves me with enough resources to finish the Great Wall next turn if I want to. And especially with the Frugality, I want to... If I don't get my farm upgrades going soon, then the Frugality is going to sort of give me food that will just sit around accomplishing nothing. So in order to get the Frugality to actually accomplish something, I do need to get my farm upgrades going sooner rather than later. But I do want to play the Fighting Band. No reason not to. Definitely want to play it. You know, definitely need to play it now. I'll discard it, so... Unfortunately, I think that's 2 colonization cards I've had to discard because I only have 2 hand space. So, unfortunate thing of being on 2 military actions. Maybe in this game I could have considered more strongly the warfare, for example, but I don't have a lot of science. I'm gonna want an H2 government forum and a scientific method, and gonna have to play the swordsman soon. So my science is under heavy strain, so I didn't feel like I had enough science to afford a warfare or a monarchy. I do draw a better infantry tactic, though, so maybe a little unfortunate, but obviously didn't know I would draw it. Anyway, Age 2 begins. So now that Age 2 has begun, we can take a quick look at our respective positions. Bull 3 has a tiny bit of a culture lead on me, though I think that doesn't matter this early in the game. More relevant is our differences in production. Bolt 3 has significantly more science than I do. I have slightly more resources. Bolt 3 is going to catch up to that soon since they have iron mines as well. Although in exchange for me not having alchemies going, I instead have my irrigations going. So I think our economies are relatively similar, though Bolt 3 does certainly have the civil action advantage. So given that, Bolt 3 definitely has a stronger economy than I do. On the other hand, I have a stronger military than Bolt 3 does. I'm higher in strength right now with the Colossus, and with the Colossus and Great Wall, I will almost certainly be strongest for the foreseeable future. In addition, I have a pretty strong colonization game going already, with 2 colonies in the deck that I'm likely to win with this colonization bonus and Isabella. And so if I can get a strong Suez Canal going, that could change the dynamics of the game pretty quickly. So I think that Bolt 3 maybe is slightly ahead of me at the moment, mainly due to their strong science income, but I definitely have, and civil actions, but I definitely have strengths as well, and depending on how H2 goes, I definitely have the potential to flip things around in my favor, so a lot of game left to go. I was also, obviously extremely happy to see this inhabited territory in my Colossus draws, which is the 3rd strongest H2 territory, but still very strong. Since I'm going for Suez Canal, I definitely want it. Bull 3 finishes upgrading their mines, doesn't siege, also upgrades one of their farms, so they now have all 3 Age 1 economic upgrades going. Maybe not ideal. I think you usually want at least one Age 2 economic building going, but it's also fine. And they are fortunate that the strategy is available for them for 3 civil actions, but I think it's definitely worth taking for 3 civil actions for them, especially with their strong science income. So this was not a great thing for me. This was an unfortunate turn of events for me, but definitely right for Bull 3 to do. Especially since I'm only on 2 civil actions and I want to get colonies going. Now, I do end up ceding... I forget which card that was, but like I said, I didn't want to cede the inhabited territory because I want to make sure I have a territory in my hand for the Suez Canal, so I ceded the other event in my hand. Obviously wanted to cede for a number of reasons. Revealed the inhabited territory. I think I might have gone all in for this territory, actually, because I certainly have enough food to rebuild my army and enough resources, and I wanted to make sure I had it. I am able to win it, though, just for 1 warrior. Both of my colonization cards, I wanted to get these out of my hand, because I would have to discard I would have to discard one of them anyway to keep the inhabited territory, so I was happy to get these out of my hand, and I chose, obviously, to pay the resource over paying the 2nd warrior into it. If I had put the 2 warriors into it, then I would have been able to win just with one of the colonization cards, but again, I kind of wanted to get them out of my hand anyway, so I preferred doing it this way. Another reason to do it this way is that I can rebuild my army while also finishing the Great Wall. Definitely wanted to get this done sooner rather than later, and being able to complete it while also getting my army going again was... Well, I guess I would have... Yeah, I would have had enough population to rebuild anyway, but again, I was fine getting those colonization cards out of my hand regardless. So, I preferred to do it this way. And I decide to not play the Legion tactic and to keep my fighting band. I think that mainly because I didn't want to give up this military card draw. I was at close decision. The Legion tactic is definitely better. I mean, it wouldn't be better this turn, but it would be better overall in the future. However, it wouldn't really be that much better, especially since we're in Age 2 already. And once you get further into Age 2, a difference between 1 and 2 strength, I mean, it can definitely matter sometimes, but it's less likely to. And so the fact that I'm on fighting bands of Legion, I think in Age 2 is less important. I mean, ideally I want to get onto an Age 2 tactic at some point regardless. And so, especially since, like I said, I'm going for colonies, I want to maximize my chances of drawing both colonies and colonization cards and Age 2 tactics, all of which are extremely important for me. I preferred the 1 card draw over the potential long-term benefits of playing the Legion tactic. I mean, you know, I could have maybe taken... I mean, I don't really want to take these Age 1 cards when we're in Age 2 already. I don't think any of these cards... I mean, you know, Nobel is a strong leader, but again, especially since I'm operating on 4 civil actions and wanting to be civil action conscious and getting the Great Wall finished sooner rather than later, definitely good. I draw an arms industry, which I was glad to get at least an event in my hand that I could seed. Ball 3 develops the strategy, takes the Himeji Castle, makes sense. They can definitely see that I'm pushing strength in this game. Takes the Organized Religion, they do need a happy face solution really soon. And takes the Engineering Genius with their last civil action. They'll definitely be able to play it this turn. Now, one downside of taking the Himeji Castle is it means they can't take the Ocean Liner Service, thus potentially leaving me to take the Ocean Liner Service, so that's notable. But I guess both 3 valued the Himeji Castle over the Ocean Liner Service. Kind of, it's debatable. The Engineering Genius is definitely going to be useful for them, no matter what, though. It's my turn, like I said. I want to see that I'm strongest. I want to get those colonies out on my turn. I do reveal a Confucius event, though. Now, I could take the Ocean Liner Service. It would take up my entire turn, though. Maybe so, and I would have to eat corruption for it. Maybe not the biggest deal to eat corruption, considering I have so many resources. So I could definitely take the Ocean Liner Service and finish it next turn, but I decided against it, mainly because, like I said, I'm aiming for the Suez Canal instead. And in my view, the Ocean Liner Service is better than the Suez Canal in the average case. But the Suez Canal, I think, has not much higher maybe, but has a higher ceiling on the Ocean Liner Service. If you can get a Suez Canal going, and you get a strong colony, which I already have in my hand, so if you get a strong colony with the Suez Canal, and you get like an extra 3 or 4 resource income with it, the Suez Canal can absolutely take over a game. I think that the Suez Canal can almost single-handedly win you a game in a way pretty much no other card can in Through the Ages, in my opinion. Now, again, that's the best case scenario for the Suez Canal. I think I have set myself up for that best case scenario, because I already have one colony, I know there's a second colony in the deck that I have a good chance of winning, and I already have a strong colony in my hand as well. So it's not, because I've set myself up, potentially, for a very strong Suez Canal, I was willing to pass up this Ocean Liner Service, especially since, again, it would have taken my entire turn, and there's other things I want to do on my turn, including taking Nobel. I think that James Cook is also available here, so that James Cook, you could say, if I'm going for colonization, maybe I should take James Cook instead. On the other hand, my biggest weakness at this point is definitely my science situation, where I'm gonna want to spend my science on a lot of things pretty soon, including a government form, a scientific method, these swordsmen, maybe riflemen if I get them. So even though James Cook certainly aligns closer with my colonization plan, well, there's another consideration, which is there's only one other colony in the deck that I know of at the moment. Now, I could maybe, and this territory I might not cede, because it might be the only one I draw, and I wanted for Suez Canal. Now, maybe I might draw more, and James Cook will be helpful, but I'm also only on 2 military actions, so I don't really want to count on drawing more territories. So James Cook may actually, in the end, only give me, like, maybe 2, 3, 4 culture protection, that's it, which is also fine, maybe in a 2-player game, but it's not ideal. And like I said, because I thought my biggest weakness in this game was my science production, I thought Nobel would be more helpful for me than maybe James Cook. He's also available this turn for 2 civil actions. Now I could just not take a leader and maybe take James Cook for 1 civil action next turn. I mean, both 3 might maybe deny me James Cook, although that would be pretty risky for them. On the other hand, both 3 is getting a lot of military actions going now, so both 3 might have like some colonization cards and some colonies that they might want to see it and win with James Cook. So there's that consideration. Maybe the likelihood of that is low, though. Again, I think the main reason I took Nobel is because I really wanted the science that he would give me, because I was feeling pretty nervous about my science situation at this point in the game. It's debatable, though, for sure. I do elect him this turn. I think that... Will that mean I take corruption? I think... No, yeah, I can get out of corruption by upgrading my last farm and building a 3rd warrior. So, by electing Nobel this turn, I get my science going, I get a bit of extra strength. I do lose Isabella's colonization bonus, unfortunately, but with the Colossus, and also I was probably willing to put a fair amount into the colony once it gets revealed. I valued the science more. In retrospect, maybe a bit of a questionable turn. There's definitely other things I could have done. For example, taking this breakthrough, maybe waiting for James Cook instead. I do think not taking the Ocean Liner Service was right, but there was still, like I said, taking the breakthrough, maybe playing the Bread and Circuses or something, or playing the Swordsman. So, Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about this in retrospect, but we'll see how much Nobel ends up doing for me. I draw Conquistador's Tactic. Both three, unfortunately, last turn they got the strategy, and this turn they get the Kanman. So, arguably the two best cards in H2, at least in a game like this where there's no Bach or Shakespeare, and both three got both of them. So, when both three got the strategy followed by this Kanman, I was starting to worry about my chances in this game, I admit. They do have to, however, need to fix the Happy Face situation, and they take the H2 Engineering Genius, so they'll be able to finish this Himeji Castle pretty quickly. At least they won't be able to get the Ocean Liner service, though. Now it's my turn. I didn't want to cede my inhabited territory again. Now, at the very least, because of the way both three played this turn, I am able to take this opera for one simple action. Even though there aren't any even though I didn't take Gaudi, I still think getting operas going early is strong in a two-player game, especially in a game like this where both three isn't really threatening much military, at least in the short term. So I did want to take this opera for one simple action. The question is what else to do. I didn't want the Harvard College, again waiting for Suez Canal. Let's see what I do. Oh yeah, so I also, I need to get out of corruption. I have a lot of resources, so I figured another benefit of taking the opera this turn is it gives me a good way to get out of corruption by building one and increasing my population. I don't need to take the scientific method this turn. It's not going to be discarded next turn, so I'll be able to get a scientific method for one civil action next turn regardless. And the efficient upgrade, I regretted a little bit passing up, but I do have a lot of resource income regardless, so I wasn't too worried about lacking resources, especially if I'm going to have a Suez Canal. I think these cards, Breakthrough would have been nice, potentially, but again, doing it this way gets me out of corruption, gets me this opera going, so now I will have at least one good advantage going over both three, which is I'm gonna get a culture advantage. So, yeah, I think even in retrospect, this turn makes sense. Discard the war with only 2 military actions, and with both the Kanman and the strategy being taken, the chances of me getting a war going look slim. And these other two cards are more important to me. I draw an aggression and a colonization card. Both 3 seeds reveals that strategic territory. So as we can see, obviously, again, I'm targeting Suez, so I definitely wanted to put as much into this as I could, and I do end up being able to win it, and I am willing to put an army into it as well as my colonization card. It was worth it to me, especially since these are just warriors, and I have a lot of food and resource income. I think, even though normally you don't want to put 2 units into a strategic territory, I think it makes sense for me. I also obviously want those card draws so I can draw more colonies. I don't draw a colony, but I do draw certainly some pretty interesting cards we'll discuss in my turn. Both they're uses the engineering geniuses to finish the Himeji Castle, also takes the Harvard College, gives them means they're really pushing science, but it is also, looks like they don't want the Suez Canal. Makes sense. It's the Suez Canal, especially if they don't have a colony in their hand for it, wouldn't be good for them. So Harvard College, definitely the strongest H2 wonder left in the game for them specifically. And they increase the population and presumably, build a war to get out of corruption. Now it's my turn, and I did have to think about whether I wanted to cede, and I ended up deciding against ceding for a couple of reasons. Again, I didn't want to cede the inhabited territory. The Iconoclasm is certainly an interesting card to potentially keep, but I didn't want to cede it yet when I wasn't sure exactly which H2 leader both three is going to take, so I wasn't sure if I necessarily wanted it in the deck, and even if I do want it in the deck, I would be able to cede it next turn anyway. The international negotiations, I also didn't really want to cede because we're starting to come up where I'm not sure if I'll be able to get the strength advantage over both three. Well, first of all, we can see both three pump their strength, and we know that there is a Reign of Terror in this deck. Actually, right, so we know exactly what the next card in the deck is, which is the Reign of Terror. So I definitely didn't want to cede who I was weakest when I knew that this was a strength event. Now, the actual turn I take, this is probably the turn in the game that I thought the hardest about. There's a bunch of considerations that go into it. So here's one consideration. The turn that I first thought of was take scientific method, play it, upgrade one of my labs, and take the breakthrough. The advantage of doing that is that if I don't take this justice system, then neither of the cavalrymen will get discarded after Bull-3's turn, meaning I'll be guaranteed to take the cavalrymen on my turn. However, there was a problem with that play, and that was the positioning of the Suez Canal. Obviously, the way I've played this game, I've played this entire game setting up for the Suez Canal, so I definitely need to take it, or else my entire strategy will have collapsed. Now, the issue is that, like, let's say I do the play previously discussed, where I take the scientific method and the breakthrough, then that means the Suez Canal will be here. Meaning, on Bull-3's turn, I mean, maybe Bull-3 would take enough cards so it'll be here, but there's at least a chance that the Suez Canal will be here for me. And if the Suez Canal is here, that means I would have to spend my entire turn taking it, and I wouldn't be able to take the cavalrymen anyway. Even if the Suez Canal is here, I would have to spend my entire turn taking the Suez Canal and the cavalrymen. Meaning I would be facing corruption, and I wouldn't be able, if there's any other, I mean, there's some other cards that I might want, like a rifleman perhaps, but there's also a more general, I think also, let's see, would the scientific method play have got me out of corruption? So I would have spent 5 resources, so that's 3, so that I would have 1, 2, 3, so I would have had to spend 2 resources more. And yeah, so I would have had to do like scientific method, play it, upgrade it, maybe increase my population. I think that would have taken me out of corruption, but then I also wouldn't have taken the breakthrough. Maybe not a huge deal, but kind of a big deal. My science situation still isn't looking great even with Nobel. But I think in a more broad strokes point of view, I just kept thinking about like my next turn, which is taking the Suez Canal, especially like I said, if the Suez Canal is here and available for forcible actions. The turns I kept imagining for what the next one would be just kept feeling bad. Because I'm still only on forcible actions. But there is this justice system available for me this turn. Now, if I take and play the justice system, which is what I end up doing, now I'll be on 5 civil actions. And that'll make the next turn, well, first of all, this will move the Suez Canal 4 spots, meaning that it's almost guaranteed that the Suez Canal will be available only for 3 civil actions on my turn. So that's one benefit of taking the justice system. Another benefit, obviously, is the extra civil action means that it'll be a lot smoother for me to take the Suez Canal for either 3 or 4 civil actions and do other things on my turn. So definitely the extra civil action, this justice system providing me, even though it's this late, especially since it's this late in age 2, like I was really feeling the lack of civil actions. This made me feel a lot better. The blue cubes are also going to do a lot of work for me because I'm having all this food and resources I'm saving up with my limited amount of civil actions. It'll make it a lot easier for me to stay out of corruption, especially since next turn I'll be spending so many civil actions taking the Suez Canal. So I think the justice system is extremely strong for me in my current situation. Now, the problem with taking the justice system is now I have to decide, do I want to take, maybe I could take the cavalryman and the scientific, I could take the cavalryman and the scientific method, but that would be my entire turn. I would still be in corruption, maybe not the end of the world, but not ideal. I also would be kind of stuffing my hand full of technologies, which after playing the chess system, I don't have that much science left. I have enough still to play the scientific method next turn, but it's still spending a lot on these. And I basically started thinking at this point, how critical is the cavalryman? I mean, obviously the cavalryman would be extremely good for me, especially since I have this H2 I have this tactic in my hand that requires cavalryman. On the other hand, I was wondering, I do have this Great Wall, and so I was thinking, maybe with the Great Wall, even without any cavalry in the game, maybe I could still be fine. I mean, there's still these 2 cannons left that I would definitely prefer to have with the Great Wall. Bull-3 is also not threatening that much military in the near-term future, unless they take Napoleon. But I was still, I just wasn't sure. Like I said, I was kind of feeling maybe I won't need the cavalryman, especially with the Great Wall. Obviously, with Great Wall, you prefer, like, I do have this Conquistadors, but this is like almost the second worst tactic possible with the Great Wall, right? Second only to Hussars, because it requires so many more cavalry than infantry. So I kind of didn't want this tactic anyway. First of all, because it's the worst H2 tactic probably, and second, because it synergizes so poorly with Great Wall. And I was thinking, if I don't really want this tactic anyway, then maybe I don't really want the cavalryman anyway, because I don't know if I'll be drawing a cavalry tactic anyway. And if I'm not drawing a cavalry tactic, taking the cavalryman will be completely pointless for me. So because of those considerations, I decided that it would actually be better for me to pass up the cavalryman, and instead get out of corruption and take the breakthrough in the scientific method. It definitely, breakthrough, obviously, very good card for me in my poor science situation. So scientific method, I still don't have that H2 government form. I mean, it would have to be the Republic at this point anyway, but that's still better than nothing. And I definitely need a lot more. I felt that I needed a lot more science production to afford that. So I did want the scientific method, but if I took the cavalryman, it would be impossible. No, it wouldn't be impossible, but if I took the cavalryman, I would be giving up on... If I wanted to take the cavalryman and get out of corruption, I would need to give up on both of these cards. I could take the cavalryman at the scientific method, but then I would have to give up on the breakthrough. And so again, because I kinda didn't want this tactic regardless, I figured that even though doing it this way means this copy of Cavalryman will be discarded on both three's turn, meaning both three can take this copy and deny me any Cavalryman whatsoever, any cavalry technology at all, I thought that that was actually okay for me, because I have the Great Wall, and my only cavalry tactic is a bad one regardless. So that's why I did it this turn. Definitely a strange turn, and not one of the turns I first considered. But again, I think that once I realized that I kind of really needed the justice system because of how desperately I needed both the civil action and the extra blue cubes, the turn kind of came together for me after that. I think that it's certainly a risky play in one sense, because, like I said, I'm giving up on a cavalry technology. But another thing is, in a two-player game in particular, like, I think doing weird stuff is more justifiable, because there's so many, like, denial considerations, and also just that I think, especially in a four-player game, economy and military are so important, but in a two-player game, you can kind of get away with having a bad economy in some aspects, or not having a great military, as long as you push culture, for example, which is kind of... Well, I have the same culture income as both three right now, but I will have more when I get more operas and stuff, so... I also think in a two-player game, it's more justifiable to, like, do weird stuff like this. So, we'll see how this play ends up working out for me, though. So, like I said, because I almost certainly won't get that, I decided to give up on my tactic. And I definitely wanted to keep this card, and the other card I kept was the Iconoclasm. Because, like I said, I think there's a good chance, like, if both three takes Napoleon, for example, then I might indeed want the Iconoclasm. I mean, it's arguably the most impactful Age 2 event in general, so I think that, like, having it just in case is definitely justifiable. Doing it, you know, I also made sure to get stronger than both three for this Reign of Terror. And I also thought that losing Nobel actually might be fine, because if you lose Nobel to Iconoclasm, there won't be any Nobel Prizes. But we can see both three is going to have a lot of science production with this Harvard College. So I kind of thought maybe I won't want Nobel Prizes in the game regardless, and so losing Nobel to the Iconoclasm might actually be good for me, and then I would obviously force both three to lose whatever their H2 leader is. So with that in mind, I wanted to at least keep the Iconoclasm around in case they wanted to seed it. And I draw another territory, which is definitely a lucky draw for me. Both three seeds, I was glad that both three seeded so that the Reign of Terror hits them. They play the Kanmon, finish the Harvard College, and we can see they do take Napoleon. So it looks like both three is planning to start attacking me militarily. I think that does make sense, especially since I'm not going to get the cavalryman, as we'll see. My military situation might be kind of nerve-wracking for me soon. So I definitely was a little scared when both three took Napoleon. Upgraded an infantry to swordsman, took a cavalryman, and a rich land. Kind of an interesting rich land, but they will be able to use that. They'll only be able to use it maybe for 2 resources on the farm upgrade, but I guess they figured, I guess they figured they had nothing better to do with that civil action anyway, which I guess they didn't. Now, because both 3 took Napoleon, I definitely wanted to get this iconoclasm in the deck. For reasons already stated, losing Nobel might actually be good for me, and definitely with Napoleon and with both 3's strong science income and strong military actions and civil actions now, I was becoming pretty scared of both 3's potential military push. So I figured that getting Napoleon out of the way later in the game might be pretty important for me, as a matter of fact. I revealed the arms industry, that I had seeded previously, which unfortunately both 3 wins, but only for 2 resources. As said previously, I absolutely wanted the Suez Canal, so the only real question left is what to spend my remaining 2 civil actions on. There's a few considerations here. First of all, I would like to get out of corruption if possible, obviously. But I think that... but I can do that pretty easily by building my second opera, which... again, I wanted to definitely push culture. With this, I will at least have 2 more culture production than both 3. So that'll give me a slight advantage over both 3, which I kind of wanted, although with the Suez Canal, I'll have some additional advantages over both 3. But in a two-player game, even without a Age 2 culture leader, I think pushing this culture production is still good. So I thought that getting out of corruption and getting more culture production was good. So the question is only what to do with my last civil action, and I decided to take the Rifleman. I could have potentially played the Swordsman, but I haven't played the Swordsman yet, and with that being in mind, I thought, obviously, Rifleman, much more efficient card than the Swordsman, and especially because both 3 has Napoleon, I was scared of both 3 pushing military, so I thought that the Rifleman might be an invaluable card for me. And we can see here, obviously, the advantage of my Justice System play, where it let me do all of the things I wanted to do this turn, with the blue cubes keeping me out of corruption. So after seeing how this turn went, I definitely became a lot happier that I made the Justice System play. And I draw the jackpot, basically. This is definitely an extraordinarily lucky draw for me. In my last 2 draws of H2, I get the best territory in the game after I already took the Suez Canal. So that was definitely highly fortunate. Both 3 seeds reveals the freedom of movement. Does both 3 use it? Yeah, they do. Well, I mean, kind of. They basically use it to save themselves a military action, of which they have 7. So, kind of ended up being kind of not a useful event for them. But I think I might have seeded it actually. Anyway, both 3 plays the reserves to increase the population, takes the journalism so that they can start getting culture production going, which I think I'm kind of 2 minds of both 3 doing this. On the one hand, obviously, a journalism is a strong card in a 2-player game, getting some extra culture production. Now they tie me in culture production. On the other hand, this is spending 6 science, which they have so much science income, they can probably afford that science. But I think more importantly, it's spending 8 resources on this journalism. Both 3 is only on 6 resource production, and if both 3 is looking to push me militarily, those 6 resources could have instead been put into, say, a cavalryman or a cannon or something. So I think spending, or 8 resources could have been like a cannon plus a swordsman, right? Or a cavalryman plus a swordsman. So spending those resources in the library instead is gonna pretty severely limit the amount of strength that both 3 might be threatening. So I was a little skeptical of it for that reason, but again, I can definitely understand wanting to get the journalisms going, tying me in culture production. That also makes sense. They also take a wave of nationalism and finish up putting their farms. Playing it this way does mean they're giving up on the opera, though. The second copy of opera. Age of taking the wave of nationalism might have been a denial for me. Age 3 begins. I discard the swordsman and put in circuses, but I wasn't really using them. Well, that does mean I might need a happy face solution soon, though, but I figured I could wait till H3 for that. And I draw 3 military cards. I draw an Impact of Balance, an Impact of Wonders, and a Colonization card. Colonization card could definitely be quite helpful for me. Impact of Balance, probably not. Impact of Wonders is at least a suitable event. Looks like we would tie on it. But since I drew the autonomous territory, this is what I'm going to take with the Suez Canal, obviously. So I decided to instead cede one of my other territories. And I thought about whether I wanted the inhabited or wealthy, but I ended up deciding, well, for a couple of Okay, well, let's finish this territory. The vast territory is revealed. I think I go all in on it, but unfortunately, both 3 is able to win it because they have these 3 colonization cards. So, but the reason I didn't want to see the inhabited territory, I see the wealthy territory, is because, well, first of all, I figured that I have a lot of food already, so I'm able to get like 3 additional population with it. So maybe the additional population wouldn't help me, but I think more importantly, I was kind of afraid of both 3 winning the inhabited territory. Before both 3 won that vast territory, they had only 3 food, and the yellow bank was in here, right? So before this vast territory, both 3 was actually having some population issues, especially after that Reign of Terror they got hit with. So I was thinking that the inhabited territory, if both 3 won it, would really help them with their population, which especially since they're threatening strength with Napoleon, I mean, you know, one of these is Iconoclasm, but who knows when it'll be revealed. So I was afraid of potentially giving both 3 additional population for the Napoleon. So I thought that the wealthy territory, I mean, I'm going to have the Suez Canal going, but I still have a lot of population anyway, so maybe inhabited territory wouldn't be that great for me. But like I said, more importantly, I thought it would be very strong for both 3. But both 3 ends up winning the vast territory anyway, so it ended up maybe not mattering. And I think my turn, the first 4 civil actions are really straightforward. They definitely want to finish the Suez Canal and play the autonomous territory with it. So the question now is what to do with my last 2 that I get with the autonomous territory. Well, first of all, the question is what resource do I want with the autonomous territory? I don't want culture yet, obviously. It's between, and I didn't really want the food. I have so much food anyway. So it was really between resources and science. And I think both could have been defended. I didn't necessarily have anything. Okay, the main reason I think I took science is because now that it's in age 3 already, I'm still on despotism. I really want an age 3 government form. So with this extra 4 science that I took, I'll be on 18 science next turn, and that will be enough to get any of the age 3 government forms that might be on the row. So that's the main reason I took the science. Another more general reason to take the science over resources is now obviously my resource income is a lot bigger than my science income. So just in general, science is more important than extra science is more important than extra resources for me. And like I said, in particular, if I want an HD government form next turn, I need to take the science. Now I do also want to take the cannons with one of these civil actions. I don't have a cannons tactic in my hand yet, but at least I have 3 military actions going now with the autonomous territory, and I also have the riflemen. So if I potentially draw this tactic or this tactic, the cannons could be immediately useful for me. And one of these other tactics, I mean, maybe if I get the tanks, I could use them, although that was looking unlikely. But I mainly took it in case I drew one of these tactics. And I also take the urban growth because I was planning on getting these scientific methods going finally soon. And I didn't really want, you know, maybe reserves, but probably not. I still have some civil action issues. Revolutionary idea for age 2 revolutionary idea when it's age 3 already, not as exciting. So none of these other cards I think were really any better than these. Like I could maybe increase my population, but I wouldn't be doing anything with it, so I preferred taking these cards. I think that makes sense. Oh yeah, I do discard the Impact of Wonders and the forget what that was, an aggression, I think. I keep that anyway. I obviously want to keep the territory. Keeping the Impact of Balance instead of the Impact of Wonders, kind of an interesting decision for me. Looking at this again, I guess I figured that if we get the scientific methods going, but I probably am not going to get more than 4 food income going, which means the income of balance is almost certainly at least going to be a tie between me and both 3, whereas Impact of Wonders is also a tie, and that's much more likely to be suitable. So I think actually this was a mistake, probably, and I should have kept the Impact of Wonders. I draw a war that I almost certainly won't use. A tactic, unfortunately, it's a modern army tactic that requires cavalry and an impact of agriculture. Both 3 seeds reveals an independence declaration, so obviously bad for me. If I had just increased my strength for 1, I mean maybe both 3 wouldn't have seeded, but maybe they would have. So definitely unfortunate that this was revealed in both 3's turn. On the other hand, I think I will at least have a... Yeah. So, obviously, pretty bad to get hit by this when you have the Suez Canal going. Both 3 plays the Napoleonic army tactic to make them weaker than me so they can play the wave of nationalism. Take the cannons, play it, and the cavalryman. With the wave of nationalism, they can build one of each, thus to fulfill the Napoleonic army tactic, which along with Napoleon puts them at 27 strength, so they're definitely looking extremely threatening right now. With their last civil action, they take that revolutionary idea. They do pass up on the air forces, though, notably. So, I seed, yeah, I seed the last colony. Again, I have Suez Canal going, so more colonies the better. I also wanted to reveal this iconoclasm sooner rather than later to cut both 3's strength potential by strength by 6. I reveal the developed territory. Unfortunately, both 3 is able to win this as well. I mean, it makes sense, though. They have a lot more units than I do. I do go all in, but both 3 still wins it for just 1 swordsman and 2 colonization cards. I, on the other hand, was extremely delighted. I keep saying happy because of Weidenbaum, but definitely the democracy showing up on my turn is very good for me. Like I said, I really, really need the government form going, and this I think is the best government form for me. I'm definitely, I mean, communism would also have been good, but I'm going for a peaceful victory at this point. The chances of me overtaking both the military definitely look pretty slim. Oh, I forgot to cover our relative situations. I'll do that at the end of my turn. But definitely I wanted the democracy, and to play it, this is why I took the science with autonomous territory. So that definitely makes my position significantly better than it had been at the beginning of Age 3. Also, obviously, the extra culture income is going to be useful, and my ability to play more operas, which let's see if I end up doing. I was worried about a potential aggression from both 3, so I wanted to make sure I was protected from that, and I could do that right. So by building 2 warriors, I now am only 8 strength behind both 3, which with my defense card means I'm protected from aggressions. So I definitely wanted to make sure to do that. And I also wanted to build a 3rd opera. In my situation, even with the autonomous territory and the Suez Canal going, I think both 3 still has a better economic position than me, sort of in general. I mean, well, again, you know, there's the Hollywood and Marlena plus Fleming, so I think going heavy on theaters is, in Age 3, is very justified, especially since it's a 2-player game. And I have the extra resources. Now, it does mean maybe that I'm not spending those resources on the military, but since there's the iconoclasm in the deck, I figured that once that iconoclasm is revealed, both 3's strength potential will be cut by enough that I was comfortable putting these resources into my theater so I could get my culture production going even more. And with my last level action, I obviously wanted this Air Forces. Discard the war, and I draw an aggression and another colonization card. Good draw. So I've got to do it at the beginning of Age 3, but to take a quick look at our respective situations, we can see both 3 still has a massive science advantage over me. I have yet to be able to play my scientific methods. However, I am now really starting to take the culture lead over both 3, because both 3, instead of maybe going for more journalisms, has decided to push the military instead. So it's looking like the game is starting to shape up where I'm going to have a culture advantage over both 3, but both 3 is going to try to punish me with military. With that in mind, both 3 seeds reveals unfortunately not the iconoclasm, but it is that wealthy territory, and this one I am able to win. I had to be a bit careful about how much, whether I wanted to spend my colonization cards or my army to make sure I could maybe defend an aggression. On the other hand, I know for a fact this is the iconoclasm, so I wasn't too worried about maybe being at risk of an aggression because both 3 was going to lose Napoleon soon, which they don't know about. So I forget exactly how much I was willing to put in, but I did decide, however, to put in an army instead of, I think I could have, yeah, with 6, I could have won it with warrior and my 2 colonization cards, but I decided that the extra defense against an aggression that the 2nd colonization card provided was more important than just this 1 warrior, especially since I'm getting so much resources with this wealthy territory. Both 3 takes the mechanized agriculture, so I was kind of sad to see this happening because it means that my impacted balance is definitely not going to be suitable. Should have kept impact wonders. Anyway, both 3 takes the computers and the reserves and increases the population. So they're starting to go for economic upgrades, which on the one hand, obviously this will give them extra resources in science, but on the other hand, I'm starting to run away with the culture at this point, especially since Ball3 is doing this instead of taking the movies, for example, or building more journalisms. So if Ball3 is letting me have the culture lead, then I think they might just have to, like, push military super hard instead of, like, doing this mecha computer stuff. They do build 2 swordsmen, though, to go up to 28 strength, but that is soon going to decrease by a lot, even though the impact of balance is probably going to be bad for me. It's definitely going to be a lot better than the impact of agriculture would be, since Ball3 has those mech ags. And I really wanted to see to get this iconoclasm out, so I was willing to suffer having the impact of balance in there to make sure the iconoclasm is out. Right now, it'll make it a lot easier for me to defend against an aggression, obviously, because it's a +4 strength swing in my favor, with me losing 2 strength from Rebel, but Ball3 losing 6 strength from Napoleon. And a military action, but that's less important. Now, as for what I want to do on my turn, one thing is very clear. I absolutely want Marlena. Definitely fortunate that Marlena was available on my turn and not Ball3's turn. She is by far the best leader for me because I have all these operas going and the extra tactic. I mean, at this rate, maybe I'm going to be stuck on the fighting band tactic for the rest of the game, but still better than nothing, but mainly because she gets me more culture for my operas, which is the main thing that I want at this point. Also, obviously, I wanted to take her because I just lost my leader. I could have maybe considered Gandhi, but Ball3 has a lot of military actions anyway, and they might get the military theory, well, they have the strategy, but Ball3 has a lot of military actions anyway, could get patriotism or something, and I also just kind of felt that if I took Gandhi, and I would only get the 2 culture from him, then Ball3 might be able to compete with me in culture production. Whereas if I take Marlena, Ball3 would definitely not be able to compete with me in culture production, and they will have to war me to win. But obviously I do still need to increase my strength some to defend against an aggression, which I can by building a rifleman and upgrading 1 soldier to rifleman. This puts me in strength behind, which again is enough to defend with my colonization card. With my last level actions, because I had to play the rifleman this turn, I'm still not gonna be able maybe ever to play the scientific method, meaning science is premium for me at this point, so I definitely really wanted this revolutionary idea. As for my last 2 civil actions, I decided to take the reserves. The urban growth definitely also a strong consideration because I might want to build a 4th opera. On the other hand, the other civil action, maybe I would use it to take the efficient upgrade, which I will probably not use at this point. Upgrading my scientific methods would be so late in the game that it would not be worth it in the first place. So I probably wouldn't be able to use this efficient upgrade regardless. So urban growth being available for 1 less civil action than the reserves, not really that important. And I think the reserves I really wanted because I'm now officially out of free population. So I was planning on using this for food, so you could get another free population to either put in my military or as a 4th opera. And I draw another modern army tactic and an aggression, so those are bad draws. Ball3 seeds reveals a popularization of science, obviously helps them a lot more than me. Takes the internet, this is also kind of an interesting choice for me because this pretty much leaves the Hollywood for me, which obviously the Hollywood with Marlena and 3 operas already going to be a very strong winner for me. On the other hand, Hollywood, maybe it would be difficult for Ball3 to get a good Hollywood going. I mean, there is still another copy of movies, but they're not guaranteed to be able to get it, so at least the internet is guaranteed to give them something with the journalisms and the other urban buildings. So I get it from that perspective. Does take an engineering will be have the science for it, especially helpful with internet, and an efficient upgrade, presumably for those computers, and the 2nd copy of Air Forces. They don't, however, increase their strength at all. So like I said, I did want to increase my population with the reserves. And do I build a 4th opera with it? Yes, I do. So obviously with Marlena, you want as many operas as you can, especially since I'm aiming for this Hollywood. Since Ball3 didn't increase their strength, I didn't see the need to put it into military either. I can still defend even with this amount of military strength. So I saw no strong reason. I have obviously a lot of resource income with Suez Canal too, so I figured spending these 8 resources on my 4th opera I should still be fine. You know, it'll now give me a very big, even bigger culture lead over both 3 as well. I do, however, upgrade my last Warrior's Rifleman. Why not? Why not? I do it with my 4th military action. I take the Engineering Genius. Like I said, I'm aiming for Hollywood, so the Engineering Genius could definitely be very valuable to help me complete the Hollywood cheaper. I also take the Revolutionary Idea. As stated previously, science is a premium for me. I want as much science as I can. So I think these are pretty obvious picks so far. So the question is what to do with my last 4 military actions. There are definitely a number of options here. Maybe I could take a multimedia in case I could maybe build one next turn, although that might be a little greedy. I already have the culture leader for both 3. Maybe at this point I want to play it safe and put my remaining resources and population into military. It would take the multimedia from both 3, but they already have the journalism. I could maybe take the movies to deny it to both 3. That's a strong consideration. But I think I think the military buildup is more important, though. Again, at this point, so after my turn, I will be 19 culture ahead of both 3 with a 13 culture production advantage and a Hollywood coming. So I figured that at this point, if there was no big war coming, I would almost certainly win. So my only real concern at this point was both 3 getting a big war against me. Military buildup obviously helps me a lot with it, especially since I'm on fighting band tactics, so the only way I have to get a lot of strength going is to just build a ton of riflemen. Which is a little bit with the Great Wall. I also think the fundamentalism, this is a denial, obviously. Both 3 definitely would have the science for the fundamentalism, and it would give them a 6 strength boost. Extra military action probably wouldn't matter, but the 6 strength boost definitely would, so I wanted to make sure both 3 wouldn't be able to get this fundamentalism. And so I think that these 2 cards, yeah, movies I could deny, but again, both 3, even with the movies, almost certainly wouldn't be able to peacefully beat me regardless. And if both 3 are trying to beat me with military, they won't have the resources for the movies. So I didn't feel the need to deny the movies. So with my last remaining civil action, I did take the multimedia. Probably I won't end up playing it, but maybe if both 3 decides to abandon military and just goes super hard and peaceful, maybe gets a big internet, getting a multimedia going, maybe could probably, I mean, I'm not that far ahead of both 3 in culture right now. So if both 3 finds a way to really push culture in the near future, I mean, they do have the engineering. I'm leaving them the movies, so they could maybe get like 2 movies next turn, get a big internet going. So if both 3 decides to go the peaceful route, this multimedia could be good. And I didn't really have I didn't have anything better to do with my civil action regardless. Discard the aggression on the tactic. I draw a war, another tactic I won't use, and another aggression that I won't use. So both 3 does indeed declare a war against me, a hybrid war. And they are able to get... yeah, unfortunately, they're only able to get 1 tactic. Yeah, because they don't have enough resources. I don't know if they would they have had the military actions, so if they hadn't... Yeah, they would... If they hadn't destroyed this, and had like destroyed this instead, then they would have had 2 military actions left, which would have been... So they had the military actions to get 2 armies with 2 air forces, but they didn't have the resources for that, unfortunately. So this is the best they could do. And they took an efficient upgrade, a pro sports, a reserves, and they played the engineering. This is, however, at least enough to get their H3 tactic going. They at least have an H3 tactic going with 1 air force. Still, though, 41 strength, not where you want to be when you need a big war to win. H4 begins. I just got that scientific method, so I'm going to be on philosophies the entire game. With the military build-up, though, and the Rev idea lets me play the military theory to give me an extra +5 strength. And the, right, I didn't have to worry about taking the Hollywood this turn because both 3, yeah, well, Yeah, so I'm gonna be leaving the Hollywood on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 civil actions for both 3. So both 3 is gonna need 6 civil actions to play Hollywood, and even with the engineering, it takes them 2 civil actions to finish internet. I mean, they can't do it anyway because they need to play the reserves to finish the internet. So both 3 cannot take the Hollywood on their turn, so I don't need to take it on my turn. Instead, I can focus entirely on defending myself by destroying those philosophies, putting them into Rifleman, destroying also a farm. I don't need it to stay out of famine. I valued the resources more, so I can get a bunch of Riflemen going. I do need this farm, though, so that I won't be in famine in my following turn. So I do destroy 1 mine to get into the Rifleman. So in the end, I am able to be only 2 strength behind both 3, even though I am still on that sad fighting band tactic. Because of all the population I'm putting into my military and the Great Wall, obviously. Great Wall providing me the +7 strength boost. With my remaining civil action, I take the urban growth, so I'm going to have 11 resources in my turn. With the engineering genius, that'll be just enough to finish the Hollywood. So I'll have 0 resources left after that. So unfortunately, I won't be able to build like a... I mean, I won't have the science for the multimedia anyway. But the urban growth will at least let me get like a religion, maybe. I didn't, you know, I destroyed all my science production, so I wouldn't be able to play these cards anyway. So there's nothing better I had to do. I didn't have enough resources to build. I could have maybe... I didn't want to destroy my operas, obviously. I didn't want to destroy this farm or the famine next turn. I didn't want to destroy this mine. I wouldn't have enough resources to finish the Hollywood next turn. So this was kind of the only thing I had for my last civil action anyway. And I didn't see there was no reason to risk whatever this card might be. The impact of agriculture is a bad impact for me anyway. So both 3 is only able to take, 4 culture for me because they sacrifice a swordsman to the Himeji Castle. They play the computers, upgrade it, play the reserves, upgrades to a second computer, which will let them finish the internet for 15 culture. Definitely, you know, not a lot, but it's better than nothing. I, on the other hand, am able, like I said, I have just enough resources to finish the Hollywood, and that'll give me 32 culture, so that's a fair bit more than 15. Now, my last civil action, well, first I decide, so I build a lab because there is this impact of balance I've seeded, so even though I'm going to be losing that by a lot, at least having this lab going will let me lose the impact of balance by a little bit less. And with my final civil action, I play the revolutionary idea for fun. So, at the end, we can see I am 51 culture ahead of both 3, so it seems... I'm not sure if there's a combination of impacts in the deck that could let both 3 beat me at this point. So, impact of balance gives both 3 +10 culture against me. Impact of industry gives both 3 +2 culture against me. And impact of science gives both 3 +10 culture against me. So they did win all 3 other impacts, but that still wasn't nearly enough. And I end up winning this game by 29 points. I will say, I think that this was probably my best played game of this entire group in this World Championships. Looking back on it, there were maybe a few cases where I think I pointed out maybe 1 or 2 cases where I made a small mistake, but overall, I think my overall strategy ended up being extremely successful. I planned for the Suez Canal from the beginning. Now, I did get kind of a bit lucky with the Suez Canal and especially that autonomous territory I drew. So maybe if I hadn't drawn that autonomous territory, this game definitely would have gone a lot differently. That being said, I did set myself up for that to potentially happen. But I think I'm particularly proud of that turn where I took the justice system and gave up on the cavalryman. As we end up seeing, even without the cavalryman, I was able to defend myself pretty well just with the fighting band and the Great Wall. So I think valuing the justice system over the cavalryman actually ended up being absolutely the right call. And I think it's not obvious. So I was very proud of me for that play in particular, and just in general for the beginning of Age 3, things were looking pretty equal, maybe in both 3's favor. But I think pushed culture at the right time while still keeping enough military strength in reserve that both 3 was not able to get a big enough war against me to affect the big culture lead I ended up getting. And so I think from a long-term strategical perspective, I played this game well, and from a short-term tactical perspective, overall I played this game well. On both 3's side, I think both three stood out very strong. I think both three got Saladin, got the Code of Laws, so got a lot of civil actions, got the Trilogy, got the Kanman. So definitely through about mid H2, things were looking very good for both three. But starting at about the end of H2, like obviously my Suez can help me a lot, but I also think both three was kind of didn't play a decisive enough game plan. We saw both three build that journalism at the end of H2, even though it looked like with Napoleon, both three was planning to push strength. And both three also built this mechanized agriculture. They ended up with a ton of extra food. They took the computers. Like, it felt like they were kind of trying to, like, both get some culture production going and get a good economy and push military, and you can't do all three. So I think both three really had to prioritize. Like, were they going to push culture hard and challenge me peacefully? Were they going to push military hard and try to get a big war against me? I think they really needed to do one of those two things and just, instead of, like, being kind of mediocre at all three aspects of the game. So that, I think, is the major strategical mistake both three made that led to their loss. So now we can take a quick look at the standings, and we can see that as after both three and Vampire D's two-player game also finished, and Vampire D actually managed to win, which is a very big deal for them. It means they are now guaranteed to finish third in the group ahead of Aaron Weber, meaning that Vampire D is now going to advance to the lower bracket of the next stage, whereas Aaron Weber, sadly, will be dropped from the tournament. I'll talk a little bit more about the group as a whole in my next video, though. For now, we can see that as a result of beating both three in that two-player game, I am now 14 points ahead, which means that if I can beat Vampire D, then, as I said, it will prove that I would have won the game, even if both three had not timed out in that first four-player game. But, you know, that's kind of a pride thing. Regardless, though, for the reasons stated, I was happy to have beaten both three in this two-player game. And I was especially happy with the way I played that game. I think there were a number of difficult turns in that game that I'm happy with the way I navigated. But please let me know, obviously, in the comments, if you disagree with my judgment. Maybe if you think that I didn't play well and I just got bailed out by colony draws. That's definitely another way to look at this game. And also let me know if you have any comments on this video, if there are things you think I could improve, either in Through the Ages or in video making. I am very happy to hear any constructive criticism. But until my next video, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you later.